Welcome, Patriots. It is another episode of Ravens Radar. This one's not going to disappoint. Do any of them disappoint? I don't think so. I think they're all amazing. But today we're going to be covering, there's a lot going on. The world hasn't stopped for everything that's going on. So let's get to it. If it's in your sights, it's on my radar. We'll be airborne shortly. Welcome, Patriots. I hope everyone had a fantastic Christmas. I know I did. Really grateful because Jesus is the reason for the season, and I feel very blessed to still live in the greatest, most free country in the entire world. Which brings us to what's going on in the world. Well, we've had a lot of activity. So liberal heads seem to be exploding again this week when Abbott sent more buses of illegals to visit Kamala Harris up in Washington, D.C., and people absolutely lost their minds. I can't believe they dropped them off in the cold. Well, you know what? Mother Nature has a really interesting sense of humor. It was 17 degrees in Texas when the buses that came to the Mexican side of the border showed up with these migrants. So for those of you who thought that they got out of the caravan in brand new short sleeve t-shirts and then were just dragged onto buses and dropped off at Kamala's house, I hate to break it to you, you need to turn off CNN. What actually happened is they got on buses, were heated, and our veterans and Americans who are homeless were left to freeze to death in the streets. So this is an ongoing problem. People are talking about Title 42 expiring, but here's the real issue, folks, is this is unsustainable. We cannot have 1,000, 2,000, 16,000 people pouring through our border every day. We economically can't take it, infrastructure can't take it, schools can't take it, hospitals can't take it. This is a catastrophe. So we're done claiming it, but here's the source. The source comes down to people saying, is the border open or closed? Let's roll the clip.
Can the president foresee working with a House Speaker who defied a subpoena from his colleagues?
So a couple of things. I do want to go back for a second to your immigration question. One of the reasons that I want to be very clear that to folks that the border is not open and we will remove using Title 8 is because by not being very clear on that, we are doing the work of the smugglers who are going to put forth misinformation. So we want to be very clear on that piece.
Wow. Okay, let me interpret wow. It's one of the 5 deadly words that women use. It's not a compliment. It's baffling at the incompetence. She really straight up said the border is closed. It is not closed. It is open, because I can guarantee you the people that we see waiting in the river are not waiting to a point of entry. See how that works, guys? It's absolutely horrific. So, and we know what the Biden administration's solution to this problem is. Yeah, kind of like that, okay? Let's just throw a bunch of money at it, and eventually enough of it will cover the river and they can just cross. Who knows? Anyways, the point is that this is a catastrophe. They can split hairs and semantics all they want about whether Abbott should bus them to these sanctuary cities. These people called for this, but the solution is not going to be to throw more money at it. The solution was not the omnistrosity that the $1.7 trillion behemoth of pork that Pelosi just pushed through with her vodka-soaked fingernails through our government so that our kids and grandkids will be paying this and eating pork for the next several decades. The point is that we have to fix this problem. We have got to secure our border. We have got to stop incentivizing people who break our laws. Period. Stop. So going forward on that, I'm going to be discussing it on Fox Radio that I've been doing of how we continue to hold our elected officials to the fire about this. So in another term, we've got a lot of talk going on about what's come out of the January 6th committee. I'm going to not put committee in air quotes because I want to appear impartial, but it's a joke and not a funny kind. But we're going to be tackling that head on because as we celebrated Christmas and we celebrated the birth of our Savior and appreciating our family and our freedoms, many of the J6 detainees were in solitary confinement. They're being mistreated. We know one who is celiac and not being given access to the proper medication, not being given due process. And this is not communist. This is America, and we're going to fight back. So today we're going to have an amazing guest on our show. We're going to have the Joseph McBride. He is the owner and founder of the McBride Law Firm in New York City, and he is on the front lines, literally, of trying to get justice for our patriots and our J6 detainees. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay with us.
Make your Yuletide memories huge this Christmas with the Tweeter of the Free World Covfefe Table Book, the perfect gift for all seasons. Retweet to a simpler time when our flag had only 3 colors, schools had 2 genders, the border was real, and inflation was reserved for party balloons celebrating low crime, low taxes, and affordable food and gas for all. Now you can reminisce over the good old days when our only issues were Russia, fake news, witch hunts, and crooked Hillary. The Tweeter of the Free World has all of Trump's greatest tweets, including Benghazi, fake news, Barack Obama, and who could forget Little Rocket Man?
But it is much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works.
The Covfefe Table Book will be cherished for generations. Relive the greatest tweets of all time by the greatest president of all time. Go to thetweeterofthe.freeworld.com now to get your copy for the low price of $39.99.
Make your Christmas great again.
Welcome back, Patriots. I promised that this was not going to disappoint. We are bringing some heavy hitters to the front line of our fight for freedom, and nothing hits harder than what's happening with the plight of the J6 detainees. We have got a lot of information to get through, but as promised, we are bringing a broad stroke from the front line, literally. So fresh from New York City, we have the Joseph McBride, Esquire. He is owner and founder of the McBride Law Firm, which is handling several of the J6 detainees, and he's joining us now. Welcome, Mr. McBride, Esquire. How are you today? Thanks for being on Raven's Radar.
Good afternoon, Raven. It is good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a lot to get in. I'm sure you have a lot of questions that come up with this. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with your law firm and how you became involved with the J6 detainees.
So my law firm is the McBride Law Firm, PLLC. We are primarily based out of New York City. We do have satellite offices in Washington, D.C. and Palm Beach, Florida as well. I came to the January 6th fight. I took my first client, which is Richard Barnett, the guy who had his feet up on a desk in Nancy Pelosi's suite of offices on Ash Wednesday of 2021. I came to the legal fight for very personal reasons. Make a long story very short, my brother Anthony was wrongfully convicted of a crime he absolutely did not commit, received a sentence of 15 years of incarceration. It changed my life. It changed my family's life. So I became a lawyer in response to my brother's wrongful conviction. I essentially said, hey, I'm going to try to get you out. I could become a lawyer in 7 years. Your sentence is 15. I could potentially get you out in half that time. Now, it took me 10 years to become an attorney. And by the time I was done, my brother Anthony had maxed out on his sentence, but I had committed myself toward criminal defense and civil rights work, especially when the government was bearing down upon an individual and or family for very unfair and malicious reasons. So when J6 came calling, it was, of course, a natural fit for me, and I've been doing it ever since.
Well, boy, are we lucky to have you in this fight. I am the daughter of two United States Air Force lieutenant colonels, and I can tell you, I never thought I would live to see a time such as this. So very glad to have you on the front fight. So what is the first, I'd like to start by clarifying, there's a lot of misconceptions about J6 and what's happening. What's the primary misconception you get about the J6?
The primary misconception that I get is that people, I guess quite naturally, want to draw a line in terms of support for people who were violent and people who weren't violent that day. And I would caution people against drawing such a black and white bright line. Look, Kyle Rittenhouse, very violent. His violence was justified. He was exonerated by a jury because his violence was legally justified. He defended his life in the street against a bunch of attackers, and he took a few lives in the process. But the law says that he's allowed to use that kind of force when he feels that his life is in danger, and that's exactly what he did, and that's why he walked. Now, when it comes to January 6th, why are hundreds and hundreds of male, predominantly white Christian Trump supporters who went to the Capitol, why are they being charged with violent crimes against police officers for the first time in their life? Some of these men are 60 years old, 50 years old, 40 years old, 65 years old, no prior criminal history of any kind. Why do they all of a sudden have assault charges against Capitol Police or a Washington, D.C. police officer? Well, I'll tell you why. When a good person shows up to a protest and he sees an officer tuning up an old lady or tuning up a helpless man or multiple officers ganging up on people in a way that is unbecoming to them, they speak out. Good people speak out and say, hey, officer so-and-so, you can't do that. If that officer continues to do that, good people intercede. Also, when good people are there protesting and they get flashbanged, clubbed, hit, you name it, they also have a right to defend themselves as well. But the thing is that in a normal set of circumstances, these people would have all been home, and these cases would have all been resolved with misdemeanor and/or violation offers, pleas, deals a long time ago. But because these are Trump supporters, because they're white, Christian, and male, they are a threat to the establishment regime that is in D.C. And the D.C. regime, the Joe Biden regime, is sending a message to this community of people. If you're a Trump supporter, especially a white one, if you also happen to be male and a Christian, and if you speak out against us, we are going to crush you with the full prosecutorial apparatus of the United States government. And that is the fight that we find ourselves in right now.
You got that right. We are now, that's it, Patriots, we're snorkeling in the swamp right now. That's it, because that is communism, is it not? Mr. McBride, is the nail that sticks up, gets hammered down.
That is exactly right, Raven.
And that's where we want to. So what exactly for all of us, me in particular, my father was an attorney in the Air Force. What happened to due process? What happened to the Constitution other than Pelosi and Biden using it for toilet paper? What happened to the Constitution and our rights?
That is a great question. And in order for the question to be answered the right way, we have to take a trip back into history. And we have to go back to September 10th of 2001, when the world was one way. September 11th, 2001, the world changed forever. Now, whether you believe that 19 guys in a jungle gym from Afghanistan took down the Twin Towers, or if it was something far more complicated, what we can agree on is this. Once that happened, the world changed. You have increased use of the NSA, the CIA meddling in domestic affairs, and the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. You have improper use of FISA courts, and you have a whittling away of our constitutional protections. And most of us, if not all of us, are implicitly responsible to some level because we said, hey, you know what? We got to get those terrorists. Maybe it's okay to sign away this right or to sign away that right. While this was happening, members, primarily people from the left, were screaming out, hey, you guys better heed the warning signs. We understand that these people may look like terrorists to you, but in the United States, we don't treat people in our custody like the third world does. People come here, we prosecute them, they get a fair shake, they get due process. And what happened is that these international terrorists that were prosecuted without due process, we are now using that model to prosecute quote unquote domestic terrorists. And these people are largely Trump supporters who are being held in jail, in gulags. They're being tortured, they're being beaten, they're being smacked, they're being starved, they're being held in solitary confinement for months and years at a time at this point, absent due process, because we have created a sub-constitutional class of people, quote unquote, domestic terrorists. And if you're accused of this, the Constitution doesn't protect you in the left's pure view of things.
Exactly. So in layman terms, if I can go out, we're being spoon-fed communism, a teaspoon at a time, until we don't even know we've been poisoned, that we've been allowed Americans, domestic terrorists, Americans. Did you ever think you would hear that in the United States of America? Our people, whether you believe they were trespassing, whether you believe whatever you believe, we have a process and we have rights and we have a constitution. And we all know if this was 1776, it'd already be Earl Grey in the harbor everywhere. So we need to, so let me ask you then about this committee. Because I mean, when you said that you're representing the gentleman who had his feet on the desk in Pelosi's office, I think all of us are just happy somebody was using the office for something. But I would like to know what your thoughts are on this J6 committee.
Sure. So I represent multiple people who have been accused with January 6th related crimes. I've also taken multiple people up before the January 6th committee as well. So I'm one of the few attorneys who has experience dealing with both ends of this. The January 6th committee is, number one, a committee, a sham committee that was put together illegitimately. It was designed to do two things. Number one, go after President Donald J. Trump to make sure that he can never again run for office by charging him, indicting him, and convicting him of crimes that would prevent him from being able to run again. That is number one. Number two, it created unfairly a very one-sided narrative and promulgated that narrative to the public, which essentially says that every January 6th protester is an insurrectionist, is a domestic terrorist. They deserve to be canceled in the workplace. They deserve to be debanked, and they certainly deserve to be proven guilty of their crimes in their criminal trials. This was designed to go after President Trump. It was designed to poison the jury pool and to prevent January 6ers from having a fair trial in criminal court.
You got that right. Has anybody made the parallel? Have you been able to make the parallel between them calling this an insurrection, a weaponless insurrection? And we're not talking about the paid actors who are in there to infiltrate, but the comparison to Black Lives Matters literally burning down cities and people dying, to this being people who had left a Trump rally where he told people to peacefully make their voices known. Were you able to make those parallels, or did anybody make those parallels between the obvious hypocrisy on this committee about a season of terror and a day that resulted in Trump supporters being murdered like Ashley Babbitt?
That's right. So I have made the comparison ad nauseum, starting with my very first motion in any one of these cases. I cited multiple instances from all over the country. You have the two lawyers in Brooklyn right down the street here from me that firebombed a NYPD cruiser. You have Dylan Shakespeare Robinson, the gentleman who threw a Molotov cocktail into the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis and set the precinct on fire with officers still inside, sending them running out of the back doors. I argued, I said, Judge, January 6th did not happen in a vacuum. for the past 1.5 to 2 years preceding January 6th, we saw an explosion of political protest and political violence in this country related to the George Floyd, BLM, and Antifa protests. Hundreds of days in a row of consecutive rioting in Portland and in Seattle. Autonomous zones set up, no police, no government zones, actual physical occupations of cities. I argued all of this and I said, look, obviously the scope of what is acceptable in terms of political protest has expanded to include all these things because these people are not being prosecuted. Be that as it may, and I said, look, that's what January 6th is. When they showed up, they had these things in mind, saying, hey, if I come here and a few minor things happen, I should be okay. I'm not going to light a precinct on fire. Anything less than that, I should be able to go home. And that's not the case. The judge straight up told me, and the judges across the board have said, don't cite out of jurisdiction cases. January 6th is a novel day and it's incomparable to the George Floyd movement. This is the greatest attack on democracy since Pearl Harbor, likening it to 9/11, so on and so forth. Look, the justice system has been politicized. What is happening right now is wrong. These comparisons are worthwhile. They should hold some kind of water in court. They unfortunately don't, and it's a grave and very inappropriate miscarriage of justice.
Also a skew on the terminology of precedent, isn't it? We want to hide behind jurisdiction. And speaking of precedent and conviction, Ray Epps. Okay, I have had the privilege of watching a few documentaries of the footage that they didn't see fit. I mean, have you ever seen a situation where they had 14,000 hours of footage and they weren't rushing to release it to the public? But I would like to know what your thoughts are on the footage and why Ray Epps has not been charged.
January 6th is the Kennedy assassination with all the cameras rolling. Now, they tried and they successfully buried that footage for 50, 60 years. I don't know how long it's been, since 1963 at this point, but it's been a long time. And most people in America, or at least half the population, suspected that there was foul play, that there was CIA involvement. Those people were told that they were tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist kooks. But they knew inside of themselves intuitively that something else was afoot with regard to JFK's assassination. They were recently proven right. We know now beyond any shadow of a doubt, based on the most recent document releases from that day, that the CIA was directly involved in an assassination of a sitting United States president. That is why they buried those documents. When it comes to the shot and other things, Pfizer wants documents buried for the next 70 or 100 years. Why? Because they're hiding something. Why does the United States Capitol Police, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Merrick Garland want to hide these videos from the public? Because of the same line of thinking. They want to bury this so far down and make people seem so crazy that, look, if you think that something like Ray Epps or there was a conspiracy on January 6th, then you too are crazy. Let me tell you this. I have seen thousands and thousands of hours of video that nobody else has seen, or that the general public hasn't seen. There were multiple suspicious actors, arguably hundreds of them at the Capitol that day. Ray Epps is one of many who just happened to be caught on video prior planning, directing people into the Capitol, and he's not charged. Look, if somebody like that is on camera, objectively planning and plotting and steering people into the Capitol and has not been charged, it is because he is protected. It is because he is working from the other side. There is no question in my mind about it. And Ray Epps is one of probably 20 to 50 very serious actors who had material roles in January 6th in terms of steering people in, opening doors, creating violence. This is not hyperbole. These are the facts. And if the government gave a crap about the truth, they'd be blasting this all over the place, but they're trying to suppress it, and that is a real problem.
And it's one of those things that we have to remind people that the law gets applied equally, not just because you are a Democrat and you like the outcome and you don't like Trump, okay? It's not hate speech because you hate Trump. But I'm old enough to remember that they said that the left said that Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't real, and they said the diary wasn't real. The Russian hoax was real, and all the others. So this is where my father used to say the difference between the truth and the conspiracy is about 6 months. In this case, about $44 billion. But I would like to caution people, but the facts are the facts. It's not your truth and my truth, it's the truth. And that's what we're fighting for. So, and I want to cover this. I know we've got to move through a few, but the bomb hoax that came on January 6th, how supposedly there were bombs planted at the RNC and DNC, but the DNC's was planted right next to the security tab, and Kamala was supposedly inside, but they did a sweep.
That's right.
A sweep of and then they happened to find the one that was concealed behind a garbage dumpster at the RNC 20 minutes before they were set to vote on. Have you seen this footage, and can you comment on that?
Of course I've seen it. And look, it's an inside job. Everybody knows it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at something and say that this is a setup. Look, if there was the idea that there was an actual bomb threat and that the certification wasn't delayed is problematic in and of itself. The idea that Nancy Pelosi, everybody in Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser had intelligence days before, weeks before, and arguably up until a month before, that January 6th was going to be an unprecedented protest day, and they did nothing to secure the Capitol. Not only did they refuse to secure the Capitol, they short-staffed the Capitol so as to ensure that a conflict would happen. Everything about this day, from the alleged bomber to the short staffing of people to the failure to put up a basic fence, stinks to high heaven. When you think about the Roe decision that was leaked, right? The Roe decision was leaked, and we had an idea that because of the substance, the content of the leak, that it was going to come out and there was going to be a change in that decision. So in anticipation of protest, they fenced off a majority of the Capitol, and they certainly fenced off the Supreme Court building. They did that within hours. You mean to tell me that they weren't able to do this with all of the prior knowledge that they had? You mean to tell me that we have somebody who, with all this facial recognition technology, with all the tracking, that we can't find this bomber? All of it stinks. All of it is wrong. The truth will come out eventually. Most of these old people in D.C. that are 80 and 90 years old will be dead and they'll be long gone because of natural causes, and they won't be held accountable for it. And that's the unfortunate reality of the situation.
And that is so, and we'll be wrapping up. There's so much to get to. I think we're going to have you on again and just and take this apart piece by piece. But in the short term, where does it stand now for the defendants that you represent? Where are they in their fight?
We're getting ready to go to trial now. I represent about 6 people. Every one of my guys who are in pretrial detention I've been able to get them out, with the exception of Christopher Quaglin. He's got celiac disease. He's suffering tremendously. We're trying to get him out still. He's down over 60 pounds. He's dying. It's very, very sad. It's very troublesome. Richard Barnett's case is getting ready to go to trial. It's scheduled to go to trial on January 9th. The prosecution, the government, is being very, very dishonest, despicable in their conduct and behavior. But I put together a fantastic defense team. We're going to fight them tooth and nail and do everything that we can do to win. If people are inclined to follow us or to give or to help, go to McBrideLawNYC.com. Follow me on Twitter, McBride Law NYC, across all social media platforms. We post updates there often. And please, if you can't give, please pray for us. We need your prayers. The currency of God is has far more intrinsic value than the dollar ever will. Thank you very much.
Preach. That's it. That is it. We've been waiting for that. That's where we're going. But again, Patriots, that was the bullet right there. I want you guys, Patriots, these J6 detainees, whether you believe or not, they stood up for their First Amendment right, and they are fighting for all of us. This is a war we have to win as conservatives, as Americans, as free citizens. So again, it is McBride NYC.
McBride Law NYC.
McBride Law NYC. I want all my patriots, Ravens Radar, all the conservative warriors, report to this line. Get involved. Help our brothers in this fight. Write a check. Do what you can. Be on the front lines. I'm going to connect with you behind the scenes as well and see what I can do to put some muscle. I have some J6ers in our district, and a lot of them are running out of money. They're running out of hope, and we need to show them what the American spirit is really about. But I am so grateful. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule today to join us, update us, and hopefully you'll come see us again and keep us abreast.
Yes, I very much look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on, Raven. God bless you. May he bless your work, and may he, of course, bless the United States of America.
Amen. God bless America. Well, Patriots, that was quite a show. I promised you fireworks, and we're getting it. Heat from the front line. And we can do this. I'm hoping that this encourages our patriots out there that action is happening. Our voices matter. Our presence matters. We can do this. Each of us was made for a time such as this. And I'm going to keep you on the front lines. I'm going to stay on the front lines. And in that vein, I want to announce that the book, the long-awaited book, My Life Story of Raven's Mantle, is going to be available soon. If you go to ravenharrison.com, we're going to be giving you information on our social media about its release, which is coming very soon. This is it. And this is not a fluff piece for patriots. Parents inside the Pentagon on 9/11, being at the Vegas massacre, fighting CRT in our schools, and having parents on the front lines of communism. I'm going to give viewers, patriots, Americans, an unprecedented look at what it's like to come from where I was to where we are now, and why I have the fire I do in this fight. You are not going to want to miss it. I'm going to be raw, I'm going to be unfiltered, and I'm going to show you how we got here and what we're going to do to keep from getting here again. So make sure you join us on social media, Raven, the Conservative Warrior, Raven's Radar. You can reach us at ravenharrison.com as well. I always want to hear your comments, but until then, keep fighting.